if I could at least share the story and finally complete the story and say everything that I needed to say, then maybe I wouldn't have to do as many talks anymore and share my testimony. But the very opposite happened.
So I'm here with Joy Tanshi Mendoza. She is an author of 2 books, and she's here so graciously agreeing to appear and share her author story. So Joy, could you share with the audience your author story?
I'm actually embarrassed to do this interview because unlike you, you've written how many books have you written? Like 12? How many books have you written?
About 12.
Yeah, 12. And I've written 2 books. This one that you're going to ask me about, and one with my husband about homeschooling. Yeah. And I really feel guilty because I really believe I should write more. This book in particular, When a Good God Allows Rape, had really been percolating for a long time in my heart and mind. And I'd written bits of it through the years. But for some reason, I think God did not allow it to come out till a certain point in time. And I really believe it's because what I was going to write about in the book was really how God took this story, this season of my life, and turned it out for good. And how could I write authentically about that goodness unless it had been years later and there was all that good, So I think that's what happened is I wrote it through the course of many years. As God would put in my heart certain parts to write, I would just go ahead and write parts of it. But I didn't really officially put it together till about 5 years ago. And when I did, it was super fast. I was able to submit it really quickly because the parts of it had already been written. And the reason why I wrote it was because I really felt like this was God's story in my life. And I didn't want to, how there's a verse in the Bible where you're not supposed to put light under a bushel. And I wanted to be able to tell people that you can come from such a place of brokenness, and brokenness does exist, but God can cause good to come out of that. And that was just the message that I wanted to be able to share. And part of it was also that I felt like if I could at least share the story and finally complete the story and say everything that I needed to say, then maybe I wouldn't have to do as many talks anymore and share my testimony. But the very opposite happened. So I should have asked Ardy for advice. Ardy, so when you write something, that basically means that you don't have to talk about the stuff in it anymore, right? But that's actually not true. So if you're going to write about anything, then all of a sudden it gives you a voice all the more, and people want to hear you actually share it as well. So that's what happened. But I just wanted to, if I were to die and I had not written the book, I felt like that's the one book I really should complete and finish, because I didn't want the pain and the experience to go to waste. Where if it could reach more people, then Lord, why not? So he was ultimately the one I really believe that helped me to put it together really quickly when I needed to put it together and get it published with OMF. So yeah, that was the author story behind that one.
Wow. Yeah, and it's true what you said, that more people want to hear the story. But I'm sure that you've received a lot of feedback or letters or emails. Can you tell us about what kind of reaction or response you got from readers?
Part of me was super overwhelmed because I was just inundated with messages from all over, people telling me how it impacted them, how it encouraged them. And they would start telling me their own stories of sexual abuse or sexual assault and how they've never spoken to anybody about it. And I just felt like parts of me were like, this person really needs me to be fully engaged with them and really minister to them. But at the same time, there was just so many that I couldn't give as much attention to every single person. So there were times where I would say, okay, you know what, I can meet with you for counseling one time, but then I'm going to have to refer you to there's a ministry in our church called Glorious Hope, or to another person who can really walk alongside you. And so that was the overwhelming part. But then I was blessed to just see how somehow it gave other people a voice to be able to share that they were also hurt in a certain way, sexually, or they were sexually broken. And to have that opportunity to be part of their healing somehow was just such a great privilege. And I never would have imagined that the book would reach that many people. And by God's grace, it has, and it continues to do so. And I don't think it's really any credit to me, because I didn't write a very long book, and I wouldn't say literary wise, it's the most amazing piece of work. But I think it's really the story that's there, and the rawness of it, and the honesty, that probably really spoke to people. And that's just, God's grace for allowing me to write it that way.
So did you have like a schedule? You said that you would write in your journal. Did you have like a very intentional kind of schedule? And did OMF give you a deadline?
So this is what happened. When I was about 11 or 12 years old, I started writing in journals. And writing really became a way for me to articulate my deepest longings and emotions. And because I wasn't always, my husband's so much more of a talker, but I was always somebody that thought about things very, very deeply ever since I was a child. So I needed an outlet for that. And that's what writing became to me. It almost became like a need for me to just be able to process what I was going through, even as a younger person, by expressing myself through writing. So I kept journals and journals of just writing. And that helped me when I was 15 and I went through sexual assault. And so that became another way for me to just express, some of the things I was feeling. It became part of my healing, that I could articulate those things down through pen and paper. And it was through pen and paper. It wasn't even through a computer, right? I just loved writing with pen and paper. And so I was able to reference so many of those things that I'd written before as a younger person, even in my, when I finally put together the book, because I had been doing writing for a long time. And I think it's really hard. And Ardy, you would know this, if you haven't developed the discipline of writing, and then you want to start a blog or you want to write a book, you're going to sit in front of that screen or the page and, okay, how am I going to start this? But if you've developed the habit of articulating yourself through writing, it's a little easier to start, right? The habit is there. And so I think developing that habit ever since I was a young person, it wouldn't necessarily be like, okay, at this time of the day, I'm going to write. But as God would give me insights, or I would read from the Word of God and something would speak to me, then I would journal that. And if some experience happened to me and it was difficult and I didn't want to be mean to the person by talking to them, I would write down my thoughts and my feelings. And I remember there was even a point in my marriage where I was upset about certain things about my husband. And I realized I was writing so many negative things in my journal. And I thought, if my kids find this someday, they're going to think I had a horrible marriage. So I had to also kind of work through that. But I think it was then I started blogging. And blogging also then I had to now be very conscious of my grammar, very conscious of articulating the thought in a proper way, where it's not just like a stream of consciousness. So even that habit of writing shorter articles and making sure that it was done in a coherent way, that was also another habit that helped me to write the book. So now I feel like I'm more equipped to write other books because the habit of writing has been in place. So I would say it started off more like the habit of doing it every day. It doesn't even have to be that you write so many amazing things every day, but I would pray. This is something I would pray. I said, Lord, can you please inspire me to write today? Give me your thoughts and your truths to articulate, to write about, and let me write those things. And that's what I've done also when I do microblogging now on Instagram. I want to make sure that it's stuff that comes from God and not just like, well, this is what I want to say on social media. So,
Yeah, that's amazing and wonderful, because sometimes I forget to pray before I write. But I've heard that from another speaker, and from you now, it's a reminder that he's the author and perfecter of our faith. He's the original writer. So yeah, thank you for that. Yeah, wow. So one last question. Your second book, you co-wrote with Edric. So how was what was the dynamics and how did you get it done? And I can see from your body language that
All right.